Man, I'm still shaken up by the crazy stuff I saw on that road trip last weekend. It was supposed to be just a nice little getaway with some friends, but it turned into a freaky nightmare. We were driving up to this cabin one of my buddies rented near the mountains. Me, Jake, Devin, and our girlfriends all piled into my SUV with enough snacks and energy drinks to keep us buzzing the whole ride. We were laughing and joking around at first, singing along badly to the radio and getting pumped for a fun weekend. After a few hours on the road, we hit this creepy back highway. It was getting late and the sun was going down, so the woods around us were getting pretty dark. We were deep in the middle of nowhere by this point. That's when things started getting weird. I was driving along when I saw what looked like a person sitting on the side of the road up ahead. As we got closer, I realized it was a woman wearing a long, dirty white dress. She was just sitting there staring straight ahead, not moving an inch. It freaked me out so bad I almost swerved off the road. Jake saw her too and was like, "What the hell? Was that real?" The girls were jolted awake by our reactions. We sped past where the woman was sitting, but when I checked the rearview mirror, she had vanished, just gone. I got the chills so bad, it was like something out of a horror movie. We tried to brush it off and kept driving, but maybe 10 minutes later, I spotted her again. This time she was standing in the middle of the road just staring right at our car as we came around a bend. I slammed the brakes, swearing I was about to hit her. By the time we skidded to a stop, she was gone again. At this point, we were all terrified. The girls were hysterical, crying that they just wanted to go home. Jake kept yelling that he saw her appear and disappear right in front of the car. We decided we had to keep going to get to the cabin just to find other people and get away from this awful highway. Every few miles, the woman would reappear. Once standing right next to my open window, her face just inches from mine. I nearly drove off a cliff trying to get away. Another time she lay sprawled across the road like roadkill. Every single time she would vanish into thin air before we actually reached her. By now I was in full panic mode, flying down the highway way over the speed limit. I just wanted to escape. Then I saw her again walking slowly along the side of the road. As we raced towards her, the woman stepped right into our path. I knew I was about to hit her for real this time. At the last second before impact, she raised her head to look at me. Her eyes were missing, just black empty pits where they should be. A rotting grin spread across her face. Right as we were about to smash into her, the car swerved violently to the left all on its own. Like some invisible force had wrenched the steering wheel from my hands. We went crashing into the ditch and everything went black. The next thing I remember is a police officer shaking me awake. He said a passerby called 911 after finding my SUV overturned in the ditch. All my friends were alive, but pretty banged up. The officer had no idea how we ended up there. He'd never even heard of the creepy woman in the white dress we described. Part of me wonders if we somehow hallucinated the whole thing. Maybe the stress of the trip or sleep deprivation made us see things. But deep down, I know what we experienced was terrifyingly real. I'll never forget that ghostly woman's empty eyes and rotten smile. Just thinking about her sends a chill down my spine. Needless to say, we cut that trip short and got the hell out of there. I don't know what evil entity we encountered on that deserted back highway, and I hope I never find out. My friends and I made a pact to never speak of what happened, but I just had to get this off my chest to tell someone about the nightmarish events I can never forget. All I know is that road trip went from fun to freaky real fast. I'm just grateful we made it out alive, because sometimes scary stories turn out to be chillingly true. But my last road trip was enough to scare me away from solo travel forever. It started out as just a normal drive up to visit my sister a few states away. But things took a chilling turn fast once I realized I was being followed. The first couple hours cruising down the highway were uneventful. I sang along to my favorite songs and munched on snacks, just looking forward to a fun weekend with my sis. That's when I noticed a beat-up gray set in on my tail. At first, I figured it was just coincidence, but over 20 miles or so, the car stayed right behind me. I sped up and slowed down to try and shake it, but the sit-in matched my speed every time. Oh, starting to get weird. There was just something ominous about the vehicle. The tinted windows, the dents and rust spots, the way it loomed in my mirrors miles from any exits. My spine tingled as I realized whoever was driving that sit-in was intentionally following me, trying not to be noticed. Well, I noticed. Panic set in as I pictured some psycho stalker chasing me for who knows what twisted reason. I didn't want to cause an accident by slamming on the brakes, so I had to force myself to remain calm and keep driving normally. But my mind was racing, trying to figure out how to get away from this creep. Each mile that went by with the sit-in tailing me ratcheted up my fear another notch. After what felt like an eternity, I spotted an exit with gas stations, fast food places, and other businesses. Busy areas meant people, and people meant safety, so I made a beeline for it. As I took the off-ramp, the sit-in kept pace, exiting right behind me. My heart pounded as I realized a confrontation was coming, whether I liked it or not. I pulled into the first gas station I saw, figuring I could run inside and get help. But as I parked at the pumps and jumped out of my car, there was no one around. The whole place was abandoned and looked like it had been for ages, with cobwebs and thick layers of dust covering everything. That's when the sit-in pulled up and blocked me in, ensuring I couldn't make a quick escape. I still couldn't see the driver through those impenetrable tinted windows. For all I knew, they had a weapon trained on me that very second. Frantically looking around for help, I spotted a filthy door to the gas station marked restrooms. Not ideal, but it was the only place I could think of to hide. I burst through the door into the pitch-black bathroom, my nose immediately assaulted by the stench of stale urine and something rotting. I scrambled into one of the stalls, crouching on top of the disused toilet so my feet wouldn't show. My whole body shook uncontrollably as I heard the sit-in's door creak open, followed by slow, heavy footsteps. The restroom door banged against the wall as someone entered. I could hear them pacing around, breathing heavily. My own breath sounded deafeningly loud in the cramped, echoey space. Gripping my phone, I desperately wanted to call for help, but didn't dare make a sound. After what felt like hours of the unknown stalker skulking around, they seemed to leave the restroom. I finally allowed myself to exhale, but didn't move an inch, just in case it was a trick. Several more agonizing minutes ticked by until I worked up the courage to slowly push open the stall door. Still no one there. On quaking legs, I made my way back outside, prepared to sprint into the woods if the psycho was lying in wait. But to my immense relief, the sit-in was gone. Whoever had been following me apparently gave up the hunt once I disappeared into the decrepit station. I jumped in my car, peeled out onto the highway, and drove like a bat out of hell till I reached my sister's place. I broke down and told her everything as soon as I arrived, though she seemed skeptical at first. But once she saw how freaked out I was, she believed me. I made her promise not to let me leave alone again till that creep was caught. Visiting my grandparents who live out in the middle of nowhere is always an adventure, but my last trip took a seriously freaky turn. Everything was fine on the drive there, just cruising along empty back roads to reach their remote farmhouse. We had a real nice visit filled with Grandma's delicious cooking and Grandpa's funny stories. But the ride home is one I'll never forget thanks to the chilling events that happened after my car broke down. I hugged Grandma and Grandpa goodbye, promised to visit again soon, and set out just as dusk was falling. I had a couple hours of dark wooded roads ahead before I'd reach the highway. No big deal, I'd made this drive dozens of times. But about 10 miles in, my car started sputtering and slowing down. I guided it to the shoulder as the engine cut out completely. Great, middle of nowhere, no cell service, and not another car in sight. This was less than ideal. Popping the hood revealed a whole lot of smoke and nothing useful, beyond my limited mechanical skills anyway. Looked like I wasn't going anywhere for a while. Sighing, I grabbed my phone flashlight and jacket. May as well stretch my legs while I waited for a signal to call for help. I locked the car out of habit and headed into the dense forest lining the road. The thin beam of my phone didn't do much against the thick darkness between the trees. I stumbled over twisted roots and scrubby underbrush as I walked aimlessly just to kill time. After about 10 minutes, I came to a small clearing. The half moon above gave just enough light for me to see pretty well. I was circling the open space when a blood-curdling scream ripped through the stillness. I froze, unsure if I was hearing things. Then it came again, even more piercing. A woman's panic screams echoing from deeper in the woods. Every hair on my body stood at attention. Someone was in real trouble out there. I momentarily considered running towards the screams to help, but another gut-wrenching wail had me sprinting back to my car instead. I scrambled into the driver's seat, locking the doors and sitting in terror as the awful screams continued. Whoever was crying for help sounded young, maybe my age. What if a psycho with an axe was after her? My mind raced with horrible possibilities about what could be happening in those dark woods. There was no way I could do anything by myself, but I desperately wished I could help that poor woman. The minutes dragged by as the screams persisted. Why did this have to happen when I was stranded alone? I said a silent prayer that the girl would somehow escape from whatever horror she was facing. Eventually, her cries grew weaker and more distant before stopping abruptly. The ensuing silence was almost scarier. Had she managed to get away, or was she? I couldn't let my mind go there. I sat huddled in the car, afraid to move or make a sound. It felt like evil lurked behind every tree now, just waiting for me to slip up. I kept imagining a cold blade at my throat or rough hands dragging me into the shadows. Hours passed at a crawl before faint dawn light penetrated the forest. By then, my phone had enough signal to call a tow truck. The driver seemed completely unfazed to find a young woman alone in the middle of nowhere. If only he knew why I was so shaken up. We didn't pass another vehicle on the long drive to the nearest town. No police cars or ambulances responding to the chilling disturbance I'd heard. I still wonder who that woman was and what awful fate befell her. Did anyone even know she was missing? Once safely back in civilization, I tried to tell people about the screams, but they assumed it was just animals fighting. Maybe they're right, but deep down I fear otherwise. Something sinister lurks beneath those ancient trees that I can't explain. I know one thing's for sure. I'm never taking that back road again, especially now alone. My overactive imagination conjures fresh horrors every time I let my mind wander back to that moonlit clearing. Although sometimes reality is more frightening than anything we can dream up. I just hope that poor woman found a way out of her real-life nightmare, whatever it may have been.